10th CBSE Chemistry, Chapter Periodic Classification of Elements. In this video, you will learn the law of octaves and also its limitations. Nothing is more relaxing than a good music. Music relaxes and calms your mind. When we observe the musical notes, we see that every first note is same as the eighth note and is the beginning of the next note. Why are we talking about music in a chemistry class? It's because it's related to the concept we are now going to study. There were many scientists who made attempts to classify elements based on their properties. Newland was one among them. John Newland tried to classify the elements which were known at his time based on the increasing order of their atomic number. And when he did so, he observed a particular pattern which resembled the musical note. Every eighth element in the series had properties similar to the first element, and this pattern kept on repeating itself. Based on these observations, John Newland gave his Law of Octaves. The Law of Octaves states that when elements are arranged in an increasing order of atomic mass, the properties of eighth element is always same as the properties of the first element. And this repetition of properties resembled the eighth note in an octave of music. So it is known as the Law of Octaves. Now observe here. This is the classification of elements based on Newland's Law of Octaves. Here are the musical notes, and the elements are arranged in an increasing order of atomic number. Now if we start with the element lithium, the eighth element from the lithium, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that is sodium. Sodium should have the properties similar to that of lithium. In fact, the observations made so far confirm that the chemical properties of sodium are same as that of lithium. Now, if we consider sodium as the first element, then the eighth element from the sodium, that is potassium, should have the same chemical properties as that of sodium. Potassium has the same chemical properties as that of sodium. Now, observe here, lithium, sodium and potassium, all the three have similar chemical properties. Recall, all the three elements here form the triads. Lithium, sodium and potassium form the Doberanus triad of alkali metal group. Now let's move on to the next group. If we take beryllium as the first element, then the eighth element from the beryllium is magnesium, and magnesium has the chemical properties similar to that of beryllium. And calcium, which is the next eighth element from magnesium, also has the properties similar to that of magnesium. So all the three elements follow the law of octaves and hence form a group. Newland's classification of elements based on the law of octaves stopped at calcium. As more and more elements were discovered and added to the list, they could not be fitted into the octave structure, and hence Newland's law of octaves failed. There were other reasons as well for the failure of Newland's law of octaves. Now observe here, cobalt and nickel were put in one slot along with the other elements like hydrogen, fluorine and chlorine. Cobalt and nickel did not share any properties in similar. These two elements are much different from the other elements in the column, whether it is hydrogen, fluorine, chlorine or bromine. This was one of the reasons Newland's octaves law failed. Iron is an element which resembles cobalt and nickel in its properties. But observe that this element was placed far from cobalt and nickel. These were some of the important factors which made the law of octaves a failure. Now let's have a quick recap. Law of octaves states that when elements are arranged in an increasing order of their atomic number, then every eighth element has the properties similar to that of first element. Law of octaves failed because it was applicable to the elements up to calcium only. Also, new elements were discovered which did not fit into the Newland's octave table. Newland's octave table had improper arrangements. It put two unlike and very different elements together in one slot, like for example, cobalt and nickel. Iron, which is very similar to cobalt and nickel in properties, was placed far away from these elements. So these were some of the limitations of the law of octaves. In this video, you understood the law of octaves and its limitations.